Hello, everyone. It's noon here in North Carolina, and we've got a few people still arriving, but we'll get started. I like to start these things on time and end on time. I should tell you, I'm Jim Lewis, by the way, and I should tell you that this will be a webcast and not a true webinar where we do a lot of interacting. It's really difficult to run those things when there's just you sitting here by yourself because it's hard to keep track of all the questions people have and things like that. But if you do have questions, we'll provide you with George's email address near the end of the session, and you can feel free to send those to him. And as soon as I go through a little brief introduction here, we'll pass this over to George to do the presentation. When it says how my client saved over $5 million by applying the Lewis method of project management, the fellow that I'm talking about is with us today as a panelist, and we'll do the presentation. And I'll let George tell you about himself, but he started out as a client, and I guess after about 10 years of being a client, he decided he wanted to get more involved in this sort of thing himself, and so he now teaches project management around the country, and so I'm real happy that he was able to get on here with us to do this. And so I think everything is working, and George, if you're ready, I'll let you have it.
Sounds good. Thank you, Jim. And as Jim said, I'm George Hollins, and my background is I went to school and learned engineering and graduated from an engineering school, went to work as an engineer, and worked as an engineer for, I'm going to say, 5, 6 years, and was on several projects and ended up getting promoted to project manager. So I'm a project manager, and I'm doing great, and get all these projects, get to flex my muscles a little bit, and get to have engineers reporting to me on the project, and architects and other people. And it wasn't too much longer, I'm going to say maybe 10 years after that, I got promoted to the director for projects and director for design and construction, which was a job where all we did was projects, and project management was our thing. And at that time, we had way too many projects for the few people we had. We had about 60 people, and we were largely architects and engineers responsible for all the capital improvements for a major research university. And I'm going to guess we had probably about maybe 400 projects at various stages. Some of them are still waiting to be finalized and closed out, and some of them were just in the initiation stage. We're working along on these projects, and things are going as they do, and it's plugging away. And we were doing a lot of smaller projects, and we would do one major project a year, which was, I'm going to say maybe 50, 60 million dollars, and then there'd be a lot of smaller ones. And most of the things we did were small. And then we did say, as we say in the slide, that we were notified by the university that we were going to be going through a phase that was just a growth spurt. There was going to be a lot more research money coming in, and a lot more income from donors and things, and we were going to be doing a lot more projects, and it included things not only just buildings and the pretty architecture, but a lot of nitty-gritty stuff. I mean, we did a water plant upgrade, and we put some new boilers in our power plant, and turbines and generators and things, and a lot of heavy, greasy stuff also. But the point was that we were going to be growing significantly. And so one of the things I wanted to do as the director for project management was, if we got all this coming, I got to know, how good are we right now? Are we doing what these people want us to do as far as our customers and clients? So I went out and I started talking to some of the key clients that we had, some that had multiple projects with us, some that had been working with us for many years. And in talking to them, one of the things that was consistent was that they all gave you this thumbs up thing on, you got really good people. And I'd sit there and kind of poke at them a little bit. I need to hear more about the quality of our work. How are we doing on meeting the specifications, and are we delivering the scope you're asking for? how are we doing on the budget? You know, and what are we doing with schedule? Are we finishing things on schedule, or are we going over on everything? I just kept getting that same response. You got really great people working there. And I knew there was more behind that scene, so I was talking to one of the trusted clients, and he shut the door and he said, look, I'm going to level with you. You do have tremendous folks. They're service-oriented. They want to do a good job, but you never meet a schedule. And you blow every budget. And we got to fight with you sometimes to get you to meet our specification. And then sometimes what you deliver isn't what we wanted, and it barely works. And I said, oh my gosh, you know, we got all this stuff coming, and we're doing this. And I went out actually, in addition to customers, I interviewed all the people. I gave them all 30 minutes to come in and schedule time with over a couple of weeks' time. And I talked to every one of them, and what I pulled out of it was some of them had a lot of experience, some of them had very little. Some of them, you know, thought they were Frank Lloyd Wright, and others were, you know, off, you know, thinking that what they had for a project management system was the best ever. But one of the things that dawned on me, and for myself also, was I went through project management. I went to school to be an engineer. And I got out of school and I worked as an engineer, and I added some college degrees that were, you know, masters in business and things like that. But I had never had a class on project management. I got to thinking about that, and these people the same way, where they had never had a class either. And so it caused us to say, what's out there? You know, NASA's putting people, you know, up in the air, putting them on the moon. They're doing that consistently and doing a good job. They got to have some kind of formality that they're following. So that caused us to go look for project management training. And I wasn't about to wade into the pond without my boss going with me. And so we started looking around at different trainers that were out there, and we kept finding actually books and things by this Dr. Lewis, and a lot of books, and very easy accessible books. They weren't a lot of technical stuff that you had to wade through. They were written very approachable and accessible for everybody. And Dr. Lewis just so happened to be giving a talk at the University of Wisconsin, which offers a lot of continuing education courses, and had a nice setup. So we just jumped on a plane and went over there and visited Wisconsin, and heard the executive briefing, and everyone got, or the boss and I thought, you know, this is something that we think is scalable for us. We think we can come in here and ask Jim to train people. And so not only did we take our entire staff of 60, which includes the secretaries and the technicians and the project managers and everybody else, but we went and brought the risk management people in, the accounting people in, and we went through, and the most impressive part of the training from our viewpoint was, and this is something that also that we still pull out of the books when I'm using them to teach project management, was Jim had a flow chart. And I thought to myself, if I'm going to teach everyone, I have to have it where everybody does the same thing. They got to all follow the same methodology, and we have to develop our, basically what we called the way we do it here. You know, we know how you do it across the street, we know how you do it down the road, but this is how we do it. And everybody in here has to follow the way we do it. We can't have somebody doing it, you know, the Frank Lloyd Wright way while somebody else is doing it another way. It has to look the same to every customer. It has to look the same to everybody internally. The accounting staff has to know. And so you know, if you just could imagine for a minute what it was like when we didn't have people following a consistent methodology. The flowchart gave us the consistent methodology, but as one of my contractor friends used to say to me, George, when you don't have consistency, you have chaos. And from our viewpoint, looking out, you know, the people that are doing the work for you guys, the physical construction work, chaos equals cash. If you guys aren't organized enough, we're going to slip in behind you and write change orders on you and take your money. And so just to kind of bring that all together, before we learned the methodology and the flow chart that Jim had in his books and that he has to follow. All of us had learned it. We learned engineering or architecture or accounting or computer programming or whatever it was we learned. We learned it in college. And we learned project management through osmosis or other people's experience on the job. And then we would shape individual process for ourselves based on our own experiences, what hurt, what didn't feel right. And so one of the things that I got to thinking about too was, what happens if we all learned it wrong? We're all doing it based on our experiences with no formal training. What if we're doing it wrong? And our results had been showing that we were. And so we were following this basically a seat of the pants method, where seat of the pants is doing it by intuition or improvising. And so when I started thinking about that, it was like, folks, we're making it up as we go along. We're reacting to things every single day that are showing up. We're not planning anything and following a plan. We're just reacting to the surprise of the day and hoping it doesn't kill us today. And so again, we're all inconsistent. We're all doing it different ways. And what I noticed was it was really stressful for our people. And when you show up every day and you react to whatever that surprise is that shows up that day, you're not in the best condition to be thinking proactively about engineering solutions and things that you want to get done. I used to joke with our guys. I used to say, it's okay, guys, to have that little lifesaver size Roll-Aid package in your shirt pocket. But when I get in your car and I see the Sam's Club or the Costco version of that, great big barrel of Roll-Aids, I know you guys are in trouble. And so this is this stress curve. I think in Jim Lewis's project management book, it might be called the pain curve. But either way, stress or pain, if you look at this, the red curve is the one that most of us are on in our project life cycle. And say that our deadline was over here at time 5, you can see that it's the closer we get to the deadline, the more stress or pain that we're feeling. And all of you out there that have done project management for a long time, you've had some projects where you've felt that pain, and you've had that stress as you went along. And if you think about what that is, it's all those nights that you're staying up towards the deadline to make sure it gets done, working weekends, all those different times. And I remember just one of them always comes to mind for me is we were building this building, and we were all of us, we didn't have enough people in the cleaning crew, so we're all there ourselves working on the finishing of the building. Unbelievable waste of our time, and we're stressed out. And Jim, if you can go back to that last one, I want to show that blue curve just for a second here. So we're on that red curve. Most of us are experiencing that pain as we go along. What we're trying to suggest, and what we suggested to our people, and we were able to do this, was let's get on this blue curve. And when you look at it, you see, okay, I'm going to go through a little bit of stress, a little bit of pain in the planning part of developing my project plan, or completing my project. So I come along, I develop the plan, I hit a lower amplitude of pain or stress. And then the rest of my job is to work hard to implement that plan so that I don't have the reaction anymore. I'm just implementing what I'm expecting to do. And that's the blue curve, and that's what will get you on. And that's what we did. We're able to plan things, get on that curve, and it worked out well for us. And this next slide shows the success. This is done by the Standish Group, and they're a group that evaluates project management success every couple of years. And what they're coming out and telling us is that of all the projects they surveyed, and these, when they measure success, what they're measuring is how many of the projects meet the 4 primary constraints or requirements, and those consist of scope, time, cost, and performance. And they're saying of all the projects surveyed, about 32% actually meet those requirements. And when you look at this the other components there, 24%, as shown in red, are actually fail and are canceled. And 44% just flat out miss the targets and are completed, behind, over budget or behind schedule or whatever it is there. And so you can see that there's very little success rate in the project management industry. And I think largely from my experience is because there's a lack of methodology and a lack of upfront planning. So as we move into the next slide, I just want to show you that what the Lewis method provided us was a system. It gave us a flow chart that said if you start here, and this is step one, the development of a concept, you can move to step two, which is more of a problem statement definition type phase. And then, so we like that system approach. And if you look at the lack of a system, if you don't have a system, everybody's going to be doing seat of the pants project management. And so they're doing it the way that they learned it through intuition and what rubbed off on them as they were moving through. The second bullet here is the importance of a system. If you don't have a plan, all you have is reaction. And reaction produces stress, a lot of quick decisions, a lot of things that are going to burn your budget up and are going to add scope and cause you some problems. The next bullet there, we're talking about very little coordinated effort. And if you don't have a system and people don't know what's expected of them next and then what comes next and then what comes next, there's no coordination. And one of the points that we made in developing our system was we said we want this system where people teach people to teach people to teach people. So once you get what that means is once people understand how the system works, it doesn't have to be the boss that teaches everyone how to use it. Everyone can be walking around saying, hey, look, this is how this works. And people can coach people within the organization to just give them that little nudge to put them back inside the lines and get them doing what they need to be doing. And so coordinated effort is a big thing. Project managers are independent. There's no compelling reason to bring them together and systematize their work. And so they're, like very little coordinated effort, they're also independent in their approach to everything. You won't have a system for estimating projects. And I put here rough cost estimates used as budgets. And I'm sure if I could take a poll, everybody out there has had this happen to them. I'll tell you a quick story. Is I remember one night I was painting my kitchen on a Saturday night. And I get this call from my boss, and he says, I'm filling out this form, and I got this little place there. It's a little box, and it needs a number. He says, George, I need you to give me a number right now to put in that little box. And he wanted some information on building an addition to a building. And it could be anybody. He could be asking you for the cost of the new software replacement, or the new what's it going to cost to do organizational improvement, what's it going to cost to bring a product to market. But he was asking me about a building addition. And at that time, I gave him a number that was double what a reasonable number was. I said, well, I'm going to put some contingency in this, and I doubled it. And then I thought, okay, good for me. I've given him a big enough number. And then I find out about 6 months later that this addition that they were going to build to this building was this architectural dream of somebody's. And they had these donors that were going to give them some of the money. And this thing had to be this world-class, beautiful standalone facility. And it was 5 times what the estimate should have been. And so I got stuck with the rough cost estimate used as a budget without proper planning. Scope's poorly defined. I'm sure we've all had that. You just go do this thing. And then as you're developing, you've got all this pressure to get it done. So as you're working on it, it's evolving and changing. And when the scope changes, so does everything else, as we know. No basis for schedule. All of you have had this happen. Let's get it done by next fall. Well, it takes half a year longer than that. Well, get it done anyway. And so there's no calculation based on the activities in the work breakdown structure that tells you what you really need to do. And this next one, where it says confusion at organizational levels, you look at that and you say, well, why would George put that in there? What's interesting about that is that was even in a study by MIT that was done in the last 10 years or so, is they're saying there's a disconnect between people at the top of organizations and people doing the project work. That there's a failure to understand from people at higher levels what it takes to manage a project, how complex it is, what it takes to get people to perform within the context of the project, and just what project management is. What's a work breakdown structure? What's a network diagram? Why do you need to plan? And so there's this confusion at organizational levels that needs to be overcome also. And so when you move along, what we went through was we saw Jim's flow chart, and then we sat down with Jim and we said, okay, we're gonna review some of the PMI steps, and we're gonna match them up to the flow chart. We're gonna take some of our experiences we have ourselves, and we're gonna sew those together, and we're gonna use that flow chart to hang our processes on. And here it is. Here you can see that the flow chart starts at the top. It's too small to read, so I'm not going to read it to you. But you can notice down at the bottom it says download a free copy, and there's the URL address. And you can get this and take a look. And on the left-hand side are the basic steps you follow. And we put a lot of effort, and Jim's put a lot of effort into the top. The front, where he takes a concept in pink, and he defines it. He says, okay, what does that look like? And what does that concept look like to the team? So the team does due diligence together to develop a common vision and mission and problem statement about what it is they're all going to work on together. And without that, you got people solving different problems, and you're going to end up with some project problems. The blue part on the left he moves into is how are we going to get it done? And we've got to develop a strategy that says, look, we're all working together on this strategy. And you do due diligence there on risk management and what are the consequences if things don't go the right way. And that was huge for us because we didn't always think about some of the risks that were inherent in some of our projects. We thought about certain things, but not thorough enough. When you ask about the consequences, which basically you're asking, what's the worst thing that can happen if I choose these strategies? And I can give you a real quick example of how that worked for us. Is we were doing a major remodel to a football stadium. It was $120-some million. And strategies, the first strategy we thought was, we'll just manage it ourselves. And then we thought, well, we've never done a football stadium. Gee whiz, every September there's a football game that starts like the first week. There's 100,000 people standing around outside of it and in the parking lots and all around restaurants around town. What if we have a crane at the 50-yard line? That doesn't sound like a very good strategy. So when we worked through Jim's due diligence there, we said, look, we're not about to take that on ourselves. So what would another strategy be? What if we hired some people to come on as experts and we put them on our staff? And then we got to thinking, this place is pretty big. It takes quite a bit of time to get up to speed to know where just where the restrooms are. And so we thought, we don't have time to risk bringing people up to speed. What if they can't perform? And so we looked at a third strategy and said, what if we hire experts that have managed these kind of projects before and have done a bunch of them? And they can come in, give us a resume, give us phone numbers of people that were their references, and that strategy piece, the blue chunk, allowed us to do due diligence on them and convince ourselves that's the route we need to go. And that project ended up on time, within the budget, and at a superior quality. And so it actually worked out really well. And you go on down through, I want to just move over to the right. When you look to the right, the knowledge areas that PMI has, the 10 total knowledge areas, they're all included in there. You're going to do an HR plan, and you're going to do a communication plan and a risk management plan. And those things are in there, and so you just build them into your due diligence as you work through the continued planning there. So the flow chart is a very strong foundation to start in how do you manage a project. And then you could hang on it things that are unique to your industry, unique to your organization, All those things that PMI calls enterprise environmental factors can be hung on this flowchart and handled really well. So we'll move to the next slide. I just want to say, when you have a predictable system, this is what worked for us. When you start working from a base, and the other thing about that flowchart before I leave it behind, was we also knew that because it could be a standard that everybody could have in their hands and look at, that we could teach everybody how to use that thing. And we could teach them, these are the steps, because they'd all have that as the basic underlying foundation. And then we found it, when you get this predictable system, and when I say predictable system, what I'm picturing here is a system where it doesn't matter who puts the ball in the pipe at the open end, it's going to roll out the other end the same way every single time. It doesn't matter who's putting the ball in the pipe, it's going to come rolling out the same way. And when you have that system, that if you follow it, it leads you through and leads you to a lot more successful project, it starts to reduce the risk. You've done a good job of identifying them. You've got a record of what they are. You've got lessons learned that are indicating these are things to watch out for. And so it's going to reduce the risk on your project. The other thing it does, and this is really valuable to our customer base, was they want order and they want predictability. And they would tell us, look, doesn't the project manager we're working with on your staff, we should be able to predict the next step. And when you have predictability for the customer and they know, okay, I know what comes next, and then I know what comes next. It doesn't matter if I have Bill or Mary as project manager, it's going to come next. It gives them a comfort level. And your risks start becoming consistent. Like we said, the ball rolls out of the pipe the same way. The customer has a roadmap. The project manager has better control. So therefore, you're going to increase your success in meeting the objectives. And lo and behold, what I started seeing was more people laughing instead of crying. And what I mean is more people having fun again because the stress level went down. They knew what was going to happen. The big one about the pipe, if you build the pipe the correct way, you build the system the right way, it allows average people to do above average work. The system doesn't care who puts the ball in the pipe. And so if the person's following the system, it's going to deliver. And this middle bullet here, I can't say enough about this. We all hear about it, but this came home to me in a project I was working on with another organization. Now, lessons learned is real simple. At the end of a phase or at the end of the project, you take a few minutes and you put a couple of flip charts up in the room. One of them says done well. The other one says do better. And you just write the things that you want to improve on. These are the things we did well. These are the things we want to improve on. Now let's go build those into our system so that everybody across the organization is doing it the same way. So we're collecting those improvements. We're building the improvements into the existing system, so the second project has the benefit of those improvements. You do lessons learned on the second project, you build those improvements in, so the third project has the benefit of the lessons learned from the second project, and so on and so on. It's compound interest. It's improvements upon improvements upon improvements over time. And if you do this for 5 years and you have that system improved and improved and improved, there's nobody out there that you can call competition because they're not doing it. And you are so far ahead. And this guy, I was going to go back to my story here. I was in a class, teaching a class on project management, and this guy needed the PDUs for his PMP. And he stayed after class and he said, I want to show you something. And he pulls out his laptop and he's got this workflow. The project management system is on workflow. And you can take this thing and you can move it through and you can see where things are and what you got to do. And it was the most comprehensive thing I've ever seen. And he worked for a pretty famous company that everybody would know if I told you the name. But I said, where did you get the concept for this? He said, we took a class from Jim Lewis about 20, 25 years ago, and he told us about lessons learned. And this is the result of lessons learned upon lessons learned upon lessons learned. And it was remarkable. I said to him then, jokingly, but I was halfway serious, look, do you want me to sit down tomorrow and you get up here and teach the class? It was remarkable what he had. And the last thing that we're saying here about predictable system is you got to have it where people can go and look it up and learn about it. And one of the nice things about having the book that we used from Jim Lewis was people can go there, they can read about the flow chart, they can read about the steps through, they can plug themselves into understanding why it is we do what we do. The other thing, when you put your own nuances and experiences and things that are unique to your industry on the flow chart or in your methodology, you get it to where I mentioned before about people teaching people to teach people to teach people. You get it where everybody has this common source that they can pull from, so they can coach each other on how the thing's supposed to work. And that worked really well for us. And just to tell you the results from this is, we were averaging at that time about $100 million, and that's probably light. It's probably more like maybe 125 in annual cash flow, about $100 million. And we started saving money in fees to experts, consultants, and because we didn't have as much rework, and so we were saving a lot of amendments and things. And we got down to where we had a lot tighter budgets. Our designs were so much better, and our documentation was so much better that we started saving money and reduced change orders. But a lot of it was just reduced cost in the beginning because we didn't have as many unknowns, and we were able to do a lot better job. And we estimated, just conservatively, a 1% savings in 1 year would be $1 million, and then you take that over 5, just in a 5-year period, we'd save $5 million. And we saw the savings in projects from just amazingly how sloppy we were before we moved over to a project management system, to where things were so much tighter and so much more orchestrated. And it made a big difference in in our costs and our delivery. So what we're saying basically is project management, systematized project management, it gives you organization for people to follow consistently, and you'll start knocking off all the 4 requirements a lot better than the 34% shown in that chart we had before. And so it made a difference for us. It continues to make differences in people that are adopting methodologies. And it's just, from our recommendation, it's something that I wouldn't be without. And so you can, for more information on the Lewis method, there's the flow chart is the first URL. The Lewis Institute there is the middle URL, and then I'm basically a subsidiary of I should say disciple of the Lewis method. So On Track Strategies is my little company, and we teach from the book there. That's Jim's book. One thing Jim doesn't say much himself, but I think Jim's written 13 books on project management, which has to be up there with the leading authors in that genre of writing. And we were very pleased. We trained our people in the basic project management fundamentals. We brought Jim back and had him teach us how to work better in teams. And let me just say this too, as long as we're wrapping up here. We went back and did follow-up surveys with our customers, and our surveys were a lot more statistically sound, let's say. And they were written surveys that they could fill out and write things down on. And we went from things where you can't deliver any of the 4 requirements. We came back with the top 2. The first one they had was you waste our time in meetings. And second was you're not very good at managing conflict. And so we went from being total disaster to 2 things we could easily put our fingers on and fix. And so we just continuous improvement kept knocking those things out. And we actually went back to Dr. Lewis and learned a method of managing meetings that worked really well, and methods of conflict management also. So with that, Jim, do you have anything you want to add?
Yeah, George, thank you. It sounds like a big commercial for the Lewis method, and I don't make any apologies for that. It's been tested for 35 years now, and it's been tested in a lot of different places. As you said earlier, the generic approach works in any kind of environment for any kind of project, and specific applications. For example, if you have a pharma company and they're doing field trials for a new drug or whatever, the system still works for that, and all they have to do is make adjustments for their specific application. The one thing I'd like to emphasize, when George came to the University of Wisconsin in Madison, we were in the process of beginning a project management certificate program, because this one course in how to plan, schedule, and control will not completely get you there. As George said, we had to go back and do some work on how to manage meetings and how to run good teams and so on. And so over time, we created a certificate program that consisted at that time of 6 courses. And I live down in North Carolina, and it was really difficult to get up into Wisconsin, especially in the wintertime from where I lived. And so eventually I pulled out and left it to some other instructors to teach. And sometime after that, NC State University, which is where I got all my degrees in engineering and psychology and so on, they came to me and they wanted to create a similar program down there. So we've had that program now for about 10 years. And we have 5 3-day seminars that we offer, and you can go to the NC State website, or you can go to my website and find out more information on that program. But what we find is that if you're going to be a really practical and experienced project manager, you need to know how to deal with people better as a rule, because if you look at the typical engineer, and I used to be one, we have a bit of the Sheldon Cooper syndrome of not being very good at the people skills. And so since you really, when you get down to it, projects are nothing but people, and the technology is just something that we work with. So you need a good dose of those. And so we try to train people to handle the people issues. And if they can do that properly, the technology gets taken care of pretty well. And so it's not a technology job as such, although I will say this to you. I think the research has proven that if you're going to run a technology project, you need to know something about the technology. So the old adage that if you can manage anything simply isn't true. So I would invite you to take a look at these websites and resources. And if you have any questions, as I say, you can follow up. And George, your email address is george@ontrack.us.com, isn't it?
You can reach me at that one, or you can just at the website george@ontrackstrategies.com. Either one of those gets the same email bucket, so that works for me.
Good. Okay. So you have anything? Oh, yeah, I wanted to make one observation about changes. I was really surprised to find that in construction, the cost of change orders alone can be as much as 30 or 35% of the total project cost. And that's just wasted money. So a good project management methodology can save you a lot of money in that regard itself. And the studies are still saying after 15 years that we are wasting money on projects primarily due to poor project management. And so this can really improve your bottom line quite a bit. And you should look at the training as an investment and not as an expense, because the return on that investment can be very significant. So when George says that conservatively they reduce the change order expenses by 1%, that's definitely conservative. I would say it was probably significantly more than that. So if you consider a $5 million return over 5 years and an investment in training of probably under $100,000, I think anybody would say that that's a pretty darn good return. So as people like to say, this crazy stuff does work when you do it right. And that's why we wanted to present this for you today. Incidentally, this session has been recorded, and we will post it on YouTube, and we'll send you a link to the presentation so that you can show it to other people if you have an interest in it. And you will be on our mailing list, which you can opt out of anytime you want to, and we will keep you informed about forthcoming webinars and so on that we're offering. We try to do this on a fairly regular basis as a service to our clients and our students. So, George, thank you for your time and coming in here, and thanks to all of you for being here. And George, if you have anything else, speak now, or it's never.
No, I just appreciate everybody taking the time out of their day and hearing a little piece of my story there. And like I say, our websites are there, and the email address, george@ontrackstrategies.com or george@ontrack.us.com. Either way works for me.
Okay.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, George, and thanks, folks, and have a good rest of your week.